Hey everyone, and welcome back to Pulp Hero Audio. In this video, I'm going to be talking about an increasing trend that I've noticed anyway in pop culture with certain fictional characters. And that is this sexualization of male friendships. Now, you might be thinking, what are you talking about there, Pulp Guy? What do you mean by that? Well, it's when you see two, usually male characters, with a close friendship, and despite there being no presence of anything sexual or romantic between them, on the screen or in the text, there is this push to make it so. Now, even though this may be something that I feel is escalating, I might point out that it's nothing new. Take, for example, the ancient Greek heroes, Achilles and Patroclus, of Homer's The Iliad. Now, some of your ancient scholars and historians and others down through the centuries have tried to read or interpret these brothers in arms as lovers, despite the fact that nothing like that actually appears in Homer's text of the Iliad. Also, never mind the fact that a good chunk of the Iliad is Achilles pouting and whining and feuding with Agamemnon over which one of them had the right to possess a particular woman. So you've got that. Then jump to the mid-20th century to 1954. With psychologist Dr. Frederick Wortham's book, Seduction of the Innocent. This book, which was obsessed, I would say, with, among other things, reading something sexual between comic book characters like Batman and Robin, and Captain America and Bucky. Now, this book resulted, in parents all across America burning comic books, burning their kids' comic book collection, and the creation of the notorious Comics Code, whose restrictions on content really cut the feet out from under some of your more pulpy comic publications that had thrived on themes of horror and violence and gore and that kind of thing. So now we jump to the modern era, and you have this trend of shippers or shipping. Now, what is that, you might ask? Well, shipping, in this case, in this context, it's when you get it in your head that two fictional characters should be romantically paired, despite no such relationship actually existing, or even a hint of it in the story itself. Now, that seems harmless enough, right? Well, sure, but the problem is what I see as an increasing obsession with pushing that narrative and trying to make it a reality, despite it not actually existing in the story itself. Now, some examples of this would be characters like Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. the BBC Sherlock series. They even made jokes about it in a number of episodes, this idea of there being some sort of romantic involvement between Holmes and Watson. Then you have Frodo Baggins and Samwise Gamgee of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson's films being another, Kirk and Spock from Star Trek, Poe Dameron and Finn in the most recent Star Wars movies, Captain America and Bucky again, now that they've gained widespread recognition in the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. Dr. Wortham would be so proud. And then you have, yes, Tony Stark and Peter Parker, also from the MCU. Yeah, don't get me started on that one, considering that Tony Stark is a grown man and Peter Parker is a minor in what is supposed to clearly be a father-son type dynamic. But yes, there are people out there who ship them. But what is it that most of these characters have in common, besides, being men and having a close friendship? Well, nearly all of them, if you notice, serve together in some sort of military, combat, or other dangerous capacity. Achilles and Patroclus in the Trojan War, Frodo and Sam in the War of the Ring, which, as I understand, was based on Tolkien's own World War I experiences, where the English or British landed gentry, like Frodo, suddenly found themselves shoulder to shoulder in the trenches with men of the working class, like Sam, who previously they probably would not have had a friendship with. Captain America and Bucky in World War II, Kirk and Spock in Starfleet, braving the dangers of the final frontier, Poe and Finn taking on the First Order in a galaxy far, far away, Tony Stark and Peter Parker on the Avengers and the Infinity War, Holmes and Watson and Batman and Robin fighting crime. And I think there is the disconnect. Modern audiences, the greater majority of which, I would say, have rarely known any kind of real suffering, hardship, or the horrors of warfare, combat, that kind of thing. They seem to have trouble understanding the close bonds of friendship and brotherhood that can be forged from such tragedies. They see that closeness, even love, and I think you can call it love, but they misinterpret and misunderstand it as something romantic or sexual in nature. Now, these characters that I've talked about, they come from the minds of writers and creators who really lived, I would say. They lived in times in which, they experienced firsthand, or at least knew people who had experienced firsthand the atrocities of war, combat, poverty, economic depression, and similar hardships. Where your only support was trusting the guy next to you. In our cushy 21st century lives, with its culture that I would say is kind of obsessed with sex, some audience members can't seem to be able to see anything else. As I guess perhaps maybe their own lives and relationships are just sadly so shallow and devoid of meaning, depth, or context that they can't see beyond anything sexual. I mean, for me, seeing Sam carrying Frodo up the slopes of Mount Doom when Frodo is too weak to take another step on his own, or Spock telling Kirk that I have been and always shall be your friend as he is dying in the radiation chamber after effectively sacrificing himself in order to save his ship and crew, are to me just a couple of examples of these types of characters, of some of the most poignant and, dare I say, masculine moments in a film or a novel. And to reduce it to something so basic as sexual is, frankly, to me at least, trivial and tawdry to do that. So there you have my thoughts on this trend. Is this something that you're seeing as well, or am I completely off base? Let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, like, subscribe, always appreciated, and thank you for listening. Later.